Hi, in this video, you're going to dive in and write code with React hooks. Why so soon? Well, I want you to write code with hooks as fast as possible because the first goal of this course is that you gain literacy with React hooks. Recall that there are three main questions that we're exploring overall: what hooks are, how they work, and why hooks are the most thrilling update to React since its release. So this video and the next few videos will focus on the first of those questions: what hooks are. That way, once you've gained some practice writing React code with hooks, we can take a step back and focus on those bigger questions of how hooks work under the hood and why there's such an exciting update to React. All right, let's jump right in. First, we're going to refactor this app component to a functional one. Rather than using this class keyword, we're going to use the function keyword to declare a function called app. We're going to open this up as a function by using a pair of parentheses for its argument, but this function isn't going to have any parameters for now. Since this is a React function component, we can directly return the JSX that represents the component structure, rather than having this inner render method. So let's take out the render method, and right away, the function of app is going to return that block of JSX. Let's also refactor this to return a header 1 element. And this is going to say hello David, but for you, substitute your own name, unless your name is David as well. This also means we can take out the component class import from the React module. We only need to import the React library, so that way the JSX can be parsed. All right, cool. So go ahead and save that. If you still have the project running on the command line, you'll find that at localhost 3000, the text is now going to change to hello David. Cool. So React scripts automatically picks up changes in your project if you save a file and then restarts the application. Now, if you don't have it running, you're going to want to fire npm run start in the project directory of home in your command line. All right, now back to the code. With a function component, we can now write our first bit of React hooks code. So the first hook that we're going to work with is the UseState hook. So once again, open up a pair of curly braces to import secondary imports from the React module. And the first hook that we're going to use is the UseState hook. The UseState hook allows a function component to access React state functionality. Now, in the previous land of traditional JavaScript classes with components, React components had to extend the component class to access the concept of state. Now, function components can employ this UseState function to gain that access. In other words, to hook the concept of state into the function component itself. All right, so the next question is, what are we going to use state for? Well, recall that this application is all about making a homepage with a bunch of useful widgets to help you save time while you're browsing the internet. Things like a custom Google search bar, a task list, a list of the latest hacker news, etc. The first piece we'll create is that custom Google search bar. So to conduct a search, we need a user query value. So let's apply the UseState function to track a user query state variable. So go ahead and call UseState at the top of the function component. And the UseState function returns an array of two values that can be used to interact with a new piece of state. So let's say that the result is set up to a destructured array, and the first value that we're going to destructure in this array is the user query result. And now the second argument is a setter function that we can use to update the state. And let's call this set user query. Real quick, if you're not familiar with the destructuring syntax of JavaScript, this is essentially equivalent to writing const state is equal to the resulting array from calling the UseState hook. And then we're going to set a user query value to the first item within that state array. And likewise, we're going to set a set user query function to the second item resulting from that state array. But instead, we can make it all short and nice using destructuring thanks to this JavaScript syntax. All right, in addition, the UseState hook itself takes an argument, which is the initial value for the piece of state. So let's initialize the user query to an empty string. All right, let's review what's going on here. Because if it's your first or one of your first times seeing this hook syntax, it can be a bit odd. The syntax itself is very short and concise, but there's a lot going on. So this UseState function, first of all, is setting up the state for a single value, user query, which we have the ability to name. We're initializing the user query to a blank string by providing that as the argument to the UseState hook itself. Then UseState returns an array of 2 values. By returning the values in this format, again, we have the privilege of using JavaScript destructuring syntax to name those return values ourselves. So in this case, we're deciding to call this piece of state the user query. Then we're calling the setter function, which updates it, the setUserQuery function. There's going to be plenty more instances of UseState throughout this course, so you'll be able to reinforce this concept more deeply with additional examples. All right, let's continue and expand out the JSX for this component. After the hello David header element, go ahead and set up a div with the class name of form. So the CSS is ready to apply styling to a div with the class name of form. Within this div, we're going to have an input, which can be a self-enclosing tag, as well as a button, and the text for the button is going to say search. With those return values from the UseState hook above, we can now track the entered user query within this component state. So first up, let's specify that the value for this input is going to be the user query. And then we'll also use an onChange handler to fire off functionality whenever this input is interacted with. The onChange handler itself takes a callback function. All right, so let's say that that callback function is update user query. This callback function is going to have an event object provided by React. So above, we can declare the callback function. So let's call it update user query. And then this gets an event parameter given by React thanks to the fact that it's within the onChange handler of an input field. Within update query, we can now set the user query value using this setUserQuery function to the resulting event.target.value of the entered input event. So let's call setUserQuery, and then say we now want the user query value to be the event.target value of the input. Now, before we check this out and see if anything is happening, well, let's add a console.log first of a string user query, and then second of the user query itself. So that way we can confirm whether or not setUserQuery is doing its job in changing this user query value. Cool. All right, so go ahead and save that. And then once you're ready and you have all the changes, head back to the application on your browser. Go ahead and open up the developer console and make sure you're on the console tab. But overall, you should now see an input as well as a button. I'm going to zoom out a bit, and there it is. And go ahead and typing in a user query. So as you type, and look at that, you should see in your logs the user query, first the string, and then the resulting value. Neat. So with that, you've written your first piece of code with hooks. The setter function from the UseState hook is certainly working to update its relevant state value. Now that we have this user query updating, let's actually use that to power a search functionality. So within the code, we're going to make a local function called search query. Let's make this an empty arrow function. And then this is going to call the window.open function, which allows us to redirect the user to a new URL using the global window object. So this window object is accessible to any JavaScript file running in the browser. And this open function takes you to a new URL. So let's make this URL the relevant one for a Google search. If you do a Google search, you'll notice that you get redirected to the /search endpoint. And then there's this Q parameter set to your text entry. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do with backticks, so have a template literal string. Notice that this is not the regular quotation marks, but backticks, which you can usually find next to the 1 key on your keyboard. We're going to https://google.com/search, and then we can enter a query parameter after a question mark, and then Q equals $ curly braces to interpolate the user query value. So overall, this is going to build a URL to google.com/search, and then Q equals the entered user query value. As the second argument for window.open, let's also supply a string of _blank, so that way this opens on a new tab in the browser or a new window, rather than overtaking the current page. All right, now let's attach this to the button's onClick handler. So on a click of this button, we're going to tell React to fire our setup search query function. Cool. Once you have all of that, head back to the application. And in your query now, if you enter something and then search, what you should find is that the search is done within a new tab or window in your browser. Cool. As a further convenience, rather than having to click enter or rather search on that button, we can configure the search to occur if the user presses the enter key. And we do that with the onKeyPress handler on the input. And let's say that we're going to a function called handledKeyPress, which we're going to set up right now. So set up a function called handledKeyPress below update user query. And this one also has an event parameter. After all, the user is interacting with the input as an event. Within here, let's check if the event.key is equal to a string of enter with a capital E to begin with. If so, we're going to also call the search query function. Okay, with those changes in, save the file, head back to the application and verify the code change. So if you type something in and then press enter this time, you should find that the window open still occurs. If you type in hello, there's Adele. All right, so that is working too, and that completes an initial exploration of the UseState hook, as well as an entire piece of functionality around it. Now, I admit there's still some things left to be desired and questions to answer around how this is all really working, but that's the focus of the next section. We're going to continue on this theme of exploring what hooks are, and the next goal is going to be to explore the useEffect hook, which can be thought of as the replacement for lifecycle methods, although it's a bit more nuanced than that, as you'll soon discover. Okay, see you in the next one. Hey, if you're enjoying this content, be sure to head to the full course at udemy.com/reacthooks tutorial. Since you're coming from YouTube, I'm giving you access to the course at the max discount Udemy lets me create. I've posted details in the video description, and be sure to visit my website at davidtkatz.com as well, where you can find links to connect with me. All right, see you in the next one.